Thank you, Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Monash.
Deputy Speaker, I have a bit of a giggle around what's been proposed today by the government. The member for Kennedy and myself have been around for long enough to know that manufacturing and the issues around manufacturing, the policies around manufacturing, have been a contest for every government that's come into play. And mostly, as the member for Kennedy knows, a lot of our manufacturing that we try for governments to get involved in, to push it in one direction or push it in another direction. I mean, I was here for the Button Plan all those years ago, and that was meant to work on behalf of the car manufacturers, but we were being pushed by what was happening around the world, not what was happening just here in Australia. We can fund aluminium production in Western Victoria, but at huge cost to the Victorian government and huge cost to the taxpayers. Now, I don't know whether we chase manufacturing like that, but it does create jobs within community. It does give opportunity for people to have a lifestyle they wouldn't otherwise have. But importantly, we know that it doesn't matter how governments come along and push and shape and pull. I mean, the great tragedy, and I would agree with one of the members who mentioned a minute ago, is that we lost our car industry. Especially when I know that the Germans subsidise their car industry at a much higher level than we ever did. There's a difference, though. They owned their car industry. They were German manufacturers. They are German companies. Ours were a Japanese company in Nissan, a Japanese company in Toyota, an American company, you're all too young to remember this, but an English company in Leyland and Austin, and all of those that went before them. I know these things. I love cars. I'm interested in cars. I'm interested in manufacturing in this country. But I understand what the member for Hinkler said too, when he said you can't have manufacturing unless you have really competitive energy prices, exactly what Victoria was built on all of those years ago. It was built on the power that came out of part of my electorate in Latrobe Valley. It powered a nation under the Bolty government to have the largest manufacturing sector in Australia, in Victoria. The world changed that. We didn't change that. The manufacturing of footwear and clothing moved from this country to another because they did it so much cheaper than we did. The Japanese started to produce fabrics that we weren't able to compete with them here. The Egyptians started to produce wool and that we weren't able to competitively do here. All of a sudden, your lambswool jumpers that were made in Australia, they were too dear, they can be imported for half the price. So our own retailers and wholesalers went straight to the Chinese and said, you do this for us. To the Japanese, you do this for us. To the Egyptians and the English, you do this for us. I mean, the English were having their tweeds made in Egyptian, I've got proof of this because I was there, made in Egypt, and then on the side of it, as I'm watching it go through the machines in Egypt, it's got made in England, written on the side of the fabric. So I think I'm buying something that's, literally manufactured and woven in England, and we're getting the opposite. We're getting something that's done in Egypt. All over the world, we now live in a world where goods and services to have input into manufacturing come from all over the world. They don't come from just one spot. There was a great food manufacturer named Heinz in my community, and when I said to them, look, where do you source all this? Do you source all this cheese locally? No, that came from Belgium, that came from here. Wherever they can get it the cheapest for the best manufacturing. So I say to you, be considerate. Don't go back on every government for the last 10 years and say you were the worst government in history when it came to manufacturing, because that's just not the truth. That's just not the truth. Every government that I've seen in power in this country wants the jobs and opportunity that's presented by manufacturing here in Australia. I want to see the government succeed in manufacturing so there are jobs on the ground for people, there are opportunities to educate their children, and there are opportunities for those who have worked in manufacture for a long time to grow old gracefully.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Swan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.